Welcome to The Art of Accomplishment, where we explore how deepening connection with ourselves and others leads to creating the life we want with enjoyment and ease. I'm Brett Kistler, here today with my co-host, Joe Hudson.
Hey, Brett.
Hey.
Hey, I want to do something different today. I want to ask you questions. I want to interview you. And the reason I want to interview you is because your understanding of safety and fear, I think, is so unique, given both like being a CEO of a company and doing air sports, losing friends, a lot of friends in air sports, that I wanted to kind of go into your story of how you've processed safety and fear. And I just think there's a lot to learn there for everybody. And also, I think it would just be nice for everybody to know like a little bit more about you and your story. So I was hoping that I could just interview you on safety and fear.
Yeah, let's do it. We were just recording the second limiting beliefs episode just before this, and one of the things that we were talking about was this thing around safety, where we're afraid to try on different beliefs or see through our beliefs and explore different ways of being because we haven't proven that it's safe. And this is something that's been really, really big in my life for a very long time, and specifically in the world of base jumping and paragliding and just air sports, where, you know, the attachment to safety really shows up. And yeah, so I'd love to get into that a little bit more.
Yeah. So I just had a curiosity. So what does safety mean to you? Like that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And I'm wondering what it means to you.
Yeah. I mean, safety, first of all, safety is an illusion. Nothing is safe. It's more of we will call something safe if we feel comfortable, if we feel like we can be in flow, if we feel like we are capable of navigating the environment, navigating the jump we're about to do, navigating building a company, navigating a relationship, if we feel like we are going to survive it or what we care about is going to survive. So,
when did you come to that conclusion? Like, how did you get there? That's a pretty sophisticated thought process, right? Which is like, safety just means that I'm convinced I'm comfortable, right? Basically. And how did you get there? Because I'm sure that wasn't the way you were born. So how did that happen?
Well, let's kind of go back to when I started base jumping, and when I started jumping, reading all the limited literature that there was at the time and talking to people, they were like, okay, this is a very dangerous sport. There's nothing you can do to make it safe. You can make it less dangerous, but ultimately, there's a very real risk that you'll die. There's a very real risk that you'll have major injuries that you'll spend years recovering from and maybe never fully. And that happens all the time to people. And it's going to happen to some of your friends if you're in the sport for long enough. And it might be you, and you're the friend that people are talking about. And so kind of getting into that is like, okay, well, I still feel really drawn into this sport. And so I spent a lot of time sort of meditating on that. And I'd find myself just kind of sitting and imagining what it would be like if I broke my legs and, injured my spine, and kind of did the seeing through that negative outcome, seeing through that consequence, and being like, well, if that happened, what would be left? Would I be somebody who's in a wheelchair and then dedicating my life to studying neuroscience and solving, spinal cord injuries? Or would I be somebody who just gives up? And it's like, well, I feel like I'd want to be the person who'd continue doing something, I feel like I could continue to find meaning. And so
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I guess, with that, that was seeing through those things was enough for me to feel safe going into the activity, which was to say that I felt comfortable that even if something happened to me, there would still be, like, I would be okay with that outcome, because the exploration was worth it.
Did you ever just think, I'm like, there's something wrong. Like I'm crazy. There's something wrong with me. Like, why would I do something like that? Did those thoughts ever happen?
Oh yeah,
I,
all the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
what,
sometimes I got off on it a little bit, like, oh
right,
yeah, I'm crazy. I'm one of those crazy ones. Yeah. Whatever.
right.
Yeah.
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 I can
Let me
even
go
see the little
prove it to
grin in
you.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. So
You
there
think
was
I'm
kind
crazy?
of,
Watch this.
right. Hold my beer. Yeah. Uh, and so that's interesting. And so because what you're saying is to some degree, what you're saying here is that like you got comfortable with it and therefore it felt safe, but the comfort in it is very, it's on some level it's very individualistic, right? What you could find comfortable and somebody else finds comfortable could be very different things. But
Yeah.
also, comfort is based to some degree on what's happened in your past. And the way that you gained comfort here was looking towards your future, which is interesting. And just an interesting thing to note.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
looking at the possible futures and saying, hey, is this something that I could be comfortable with?
Yeah.
And like we talked about in limiting beliefs, it wasn't so that I would go ahead and get myself injured and be in a wheelchair. It was that so I could explore life feeling unconstricted and
Yeah.
unconstrained.
Yeah.
And one thing that I learned about safety is that safety can become an idea that we use to stop seeing reality so that we feel comfortable. And
Mm.
that can be helpful for us. Like the first time you're making a base jump, there's certain things that you need to pay attention to. And there's also certain things that just might be overwhelming if you're considering them. So
Yeah.
you focus on the task, you focus on the training, you focus on what you're about to do, and you try not to think too much about your mother crying when you die, because that might
Right.
just be something that takes you out of the flow.
Yeah.
I've had moments where there was a one jump that I did in Europe where I jumped my wingsuit and I was flying down a mountain, and there was a section where if you were flying at a good enough glide ratio, you could then fly over another mountain and then have like a whole nother several thousand feet of flight. And I found myself like just kind of I was going to make it. I thought I was going to make it, and was pretty sure I was going to make it. And then I just like it flashed through my head of this like I had this imagining of my girlfriend at the time getting a phone call,
Yeah.
and I like that all of a sudden took me out of it. And I was like, I'm not going to make it. And I like kind of panicked, pulled my parachute, ended up landing in someone's backyard somewhere in the middle of France. And like I bailed and I survived, and I also did not do it very gracefully. Like
Right.
I let in information that dysregulated me, and
Yeah.
constriction occurred, and then I had to bail. So yeah, safety like that kind of just brings it back to this point where like I've learned safety is an idea that we use to feel safe, but it can bring us into contact with reality, and it can take us out of contact with reality.
Right.
Like if
Yeah.
I'm standing at an exit point and I want to feel safe so that I jump, like let's say that I really want to feel safe and make this jump because I'm with a group of people and I don't want them to have to climb down this mountain with me that we just climbed up, and I don't want
Yeah.
them to have to wait by the car while I climb down. So I'm more afraid of disappointing people and not being seen than I am of the jump. Then I might just dissociate myself from some of the risks of the
Right.
jump so that I reach this point where I'm like, aha, okay, I'm safe.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So on that for a second, so I would assume it's really important when you're on that, the base that you're jumping off of, so to speak, that you know which one you're doing. Like, how do you know when you are using the idea of safety to detach from reality, and when do you know when you're using that sense of safety to be more in contact with your reality? Because it seems like with base jumping, more in contact with reality is good.
Yeah.
With the
Yeah.
reality of
Contact with
this
the reality.
moment, in this
Yeah.
moment is good. Yeah. So
Yeah. And that's
how do you distinguish?
Yeah, that's a good question. Something that we've said a lot in the sport, and this comes from other places too, is that the other side of the coin of fear is excitement.
Yeah.
And if I'm feeling a grounded level of excitement and anticipation, and I feel
Yeah.
like my body is amped in such a way that is like metabolically prepared for what I'm about to do,
Mm.
and I feel that I'm in flow, and I feel like flow is accessible to me,
Yeah.
and I'm also continuing. I'm not just reaching that state because I'm putting on the blinders. I'm reaching that state because I'm welcoming any red flags that there might be, and
Yeah.
just you're not to be found. Everything feels right. So there's a certain kind of grounded excitement that occurs there, and
Grounded
there's
excitement. It also sounds like if you notice any defensiveness in your system, that's a red flag.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, defensiveness in the system, or just what makes me not want to talk about the wind conditions over that ridge over there. Like
Yeah.
what's making me focus on like what's making me focus on that it's a nice bright sunny day and not on that I'm really tired and we were out late partying last night and I'm not
Right.
really feeling on it right now.
Well, the amazing thing is this is such a metaphor for business, right? It's
Yeah.
like the things that we don't talk about, which are usually get us in trouble, though they're kind of in the side of our mind, like something's not happening right there, but let's not pay attention to it.
Yeah. Yeah. You imagine in a boardroom, once everybody just if there's a risk and you're assessing the risk and nobody in the room is willing to actually feel through the consequence of
Yeah.
taking a wrong action in that risk, then you might or the consequence of like the action you may have to take may be more difficult. You may not want to lay people off. You may
Right.
not want to lay off somebody that you have a personal attachment or relationship to. And since you're
Yeah.
not willing to look at that, you're far more likely to be like, oh, here's a story about how it's safe.
Yeah.
We're actually going to be fine because XYZ, rather than really seeing the deeper reality.
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah, this is a something that just it's been a conversation around the base jumping community for a long time of people will start to identify as like, oh, I'm a safe jumper, that person's not a safe jumper, or this is a safe kind of jump and that's not a safe kind
Mm-hmm.
of jump, or is this jump safe for a beginner jumper like me? Or it's
Right.
like the answer is no to all of those things, but the answer is like, well, what are the risks, and how do you as an organism interact with your environment given those conditions? And do you have the experience? Does your body have the experience? Does your body, when you're standing on the edge of this cliff and you're about to jump, does your body have enough history of similar situations that it's like, yeah, we got this, I know what to do? It's like jumping into a swimming pool. And
Yeah.
if not,
So,
then that shows up in a somatic experience. And you'd asked like what it feels like. And I spoke about grounded excitement.
yeah.
And another one is ungrounded excitement. If you're really excited, but there's like that excitement is sort of covering up a little bit of anxiety and you're not letting that anxiety move through and integrate into your excitement, then you're going to find yourself a little bit bouncy.
Yeah.
And then there's another way that can look is just straight anxiety.
Yeah.
And another way that can look is anxiety funneling through to anger. Sometimes people get angry at an exit
Well,
point
agitated.
if they're scared, or they'll find someone else to be kind of like they'll like triple gear check someone else and like be super sure that the least experienced jumper on the load is safe.
Gotcha. Right.
um,
Right.
yeah, there's all kinds of ways that it comes out, but if they're all a form of not being grounded in yourself, in your
Fascinating.
feeling your body.
And how much is this applied to your business? Like you're in a room with the people running your business with you. How much does that feel like sitting at a entry point? How much are you monitoring your body the same way? How much are you?
Yeah, interestingly, my business is fully remote.
Yeah.
So sitting in a room is an experience that I rarely get with my team.
Yeah.
So a lot of my time with my business is actually spent sitting with myself and deciding what to do next, which might be calling a meeting. It might be, I might be doing some strategy. It might be just getting some work done. And
Yeah.
if I'm with a team and we're talking, it's the same thing. I find that for myself, one way that I will leave the present moment, leave myself, will be to find something to get excited about. Like, oh yeah, the numbers are scary. The economy just tanked. Everything's a mess. And look at all this opportunity out there.
Right.
And looking at the opportunity is a wonderful thing to do. And clinging to the opportunity, grasping for it. There's a different feeling in that.
Yeah, not grounded. Excitement is what it's here. It sounds like, yeah. And so that gives you the same signal. Okay, that informs whether I'm going to jump or not jump, or how I'm going to jump.
Yeah, and it really relates back to something that we've talked about before, which is it's about the inner security. The more dependent you are on external security, then the more internally insecure you're going to feel. For example, if it's something about external conditions, and let me find the real metaphor there. Yeah, so like, let's say I'm standing on a cliff and I'm about to jump, and there's something that needs to happen performance-wise, something that I need to execute. And I imagine jumping, and I'm visualizing this. And I might visualize myself throwing the wrong axis of rotation. Like, I might visualize myself failing to get my wingsuit flying. I might visualize myself failing to outfly a certain ledge. And allowing myself to feel those possible outcomes as I'm preparing to do something, allowing myself to feel what it would be like to have that occur and recover from it, have that occur and not recover from it, have that occur and have that last oh shit moment before impact. And just having all of that possibility moving through my body and integrating is something that allows me to, when I actually make the jump, if something goes a little bit awry, I know, like, my body knows what to do. An example is walking on a slack line. If anyone listening to this has ever seen people walk a slack line, it's like this 1-inch piece of webbing that can be tied between two trees, or it can be, set up between two cliffs, like 1,000 feet in the air. And one of the things that I love to say about learning to slackline is that it's actually the art of learning to fall off. When you first stand on the thing, you feel so insecure. Your legs just wiggle and shudder, and you fall right off. And you're like, how am I ever going to be able to walk this thing? And then I like to tell people, like, the line is not insecure at all. The line is just perfectly stable. The only insecurity that's being brought into the system is what you're bringing to it. It's your muscles overcorrecting. It's your top down trying to think your way through it. And initially, you're gonna fall. But the more you do it, the more internal stability you develop. And then the less overcorrecting your legs need to do. And then you find that the balance is just there's just a natural point of balance on the line. The line wants to balance, your body wants to balance, and it will just do it. And that's when you start getting to the point where you can walk across, mile-long lines. I haven't done that, and several of my friends have. And people just see it and they're like, this is amazing. How do you do it? And it's like, that's a really good metaphor for the internal security. That
it's interesting. Yeah. Go ahead. No, the more.
Yeah, just the more internal security you develop, and this can occur in physical reality, could occur in your social reality or business. The more secure in yourself you are, the less you need any specific external conditions to be any certain way. And the more you'll be able to remain in flow through whatever conditions end up occurring.
Yeah. So what's interesting to me is that somebody listening to this can be like, okay, I have to learn to be balanced so that I can be secure, which is in itself an overcorrection and a lack of security.
Mhm.
And they might have missed the point of what you're saying here, which is learning to be secure is learning to fall. And
Yeah.
what is like a real story in slackline? Obviously you've fallen a million times, but what's a real story of it, like in business or in relationships or in even in base jumping, where a fall has really taught you how to be secure?
Hmm. Yeah, let me think about that one for a moment. Yeah, okay. Um, yeah, in 2009, I was in South Africa, and this was sort of a long journey. I had broken my arm skiing in Utah and then continued to go on an Africa trip anyway, even though I had a broken arm. I was in Zambia with a friend. And then I re-broke the arm doing some like refugee smuggling on motorcycles and having a crash. And then I got the news that my dad had lost his job and he lost his health insurance. And I had like a couple $100. And I was doing some freelance work online, web work that wasn't particularly consistent. And so I had like a couple $100 and a broken arm and no health insurance. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? So I went to South Africa. Took a bus down to Cape Town. They've got good medical care there, and I was like, I'm just going to figure things out from South Africa and get some medical care. And so I did that for a while, and I kind of sank into the city. I really loved it. I was there for about a month or so, and then I went to go check my bank account, pull out some money from the ATM, and it was empty. I was like, what? And I looked, and the exchange rate had actually halved almost in like the month or two that I had been there, and I hadn't checked it. And so I was suddenly out of money, and I didn't know where my next money was coming from, and I was in this foreign country. And luckily I'd already paid my rent for that week. So I had a place to stay. And I was just like, okay, well, I've got like nothing. I have no idea what I'm going to do. So I just started walking around to different like bars and businesses on it was called Long Street, which is the main kind of thoroughfare in Cape Town. And I just started writing down my name and phone number on napkins. And I walked into businesses and I was like, hey, I'm a web developer. I mean, like, y'all's websites look like they could use a little bit of work. I'd love to, help you out. And I ended up getting
Sure.
one phone call from that. And it didn't turn out to be the best client, but just like that was the process where I was like, I was out of money, out of everything. And I still refer to that moment now where like, you know what? If I actually lost fully everything, it would suck. There's a lot that I love and that I'm attached to about like material possessions and access to financial resources that I've had in my life. And I also know that I can go back and just write down my name and phone number on napkins and do something from absolute scratch in a brand new place in a brand new environment all over again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where I say, like, walking the slack line, you end up learning some internal stability that, like, you build this experience over the course of your life.
Yeah.
And like, it's true that like a newborn baby doesn't have like their body has a biological stability. It has instincts, and it's also not
Yeah.
going to successfully take care of itself. And then over time, we do get our feet under us. And this is one of the things where the process of letting go of limiting beliefs, our identity lags behind our actual growth.
Hmm.
And the more that we see that, the more that we see that there actually has always been an internal security and an internal stability. And that's the kind of internal stability that might make us be like, hey, let me try something new, like walking a slack line or starting a business. And often something happens that we forget. that we have that innate security and stability, that we have the capacity to assess reality wherever we're at and take steps.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing a bit of your life with us. I really appreciate it. And I love your perspective on safety. It's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing everything.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening to The Art of Accomplishment. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please subscribe and rate us in your podcast app. We'd love your feedback, so feel free to send us questions or comments. You can reach out to us, join our newsletter, or check out our courses at artofaccomplishment.com.